Good afternoon, members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those viewing via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to the continuation of the Central Committee meeting number 21, which started during the parliamentary year 2022-23 for today, Thursday, October 26, 2023. A special welcome is extended to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Honorable Minister Dr. Rudolph Samuel. We have established a quorum of 8 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following members: MP Rolando Bryson, MP Chanel Brownbill, MP Rayon Peterson. Are there any other notifications? I see MP Christopher Emmanuel. MP Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And good afternoon to the Honorable Minister and his support staff, my colleagues, honorably. Good afternoon to each and every one of you, the people of St. Martin who's listening by whichever means, and everyone in the Tribune, good afternoon. Mr. Chairman, I had no intentions really because of a busy schedule. So I sent in earlier that I won't be present for meetings today, but I had to come to this one specifically because I'm happy that the Minister of Education is here, and when I gaze in the Tribune, I'm seeing individuals from the university too as well, which is a good thing. And the reason for that, Mr. Chairman, is because I've taken notice that the board of USM has now hired a dean, which is a former Minister of Education from St. Lucia. And I wish the individual all the best. I wish them much success to take the university from where it's at to greater heights. I truly do wish that. However, it would behoove of me, Mr. Chairman, not to point out, again, that the government has dropped the ball on this issue. Now, Mr. Chairman, the government would say, well, we have nothing to do with that because the USM has a board, which is rightfully so, and they can appoint whoever they want. But it's the government of St. Martin that approves or appoints or give the work permit, Mr. Chairman. And I'm happy that the Minister of Education is here to let him know that when we don't recognize and see our individuals, Howard University, they have seen it. The board of USM would say, oh, well, this individual didn't apply. They didn't have to. Mr. Chairman, again, when we don't recognize our own, others do. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Christopher Emmanuel. And a notification I missed out to say that MP Solange Duncan would be late today. The next person is MP Sarah Westcott Williams. MP Sarah Westcott, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon to you. Mr. Chairman, I made my point regarding the meeting schedule of this week to you, and you were supposed to get back to me with respect to meetings that would have been scheduled. Mr. Chairman, I can't help but repeat a request or my statement regarding requests that have been made for meetings on topics such as this that affect a majority of people on St. Martin. The TAP ministry, for example, the issue of the marketplace, GEBE, all of these are matters that warrant the attention of Parliament. So I would like to know, Mr. Chairman, if you have any further update for us regarding these outstanding meetings on topics that regard a majority of persons on St. Martin. The continuation of such, rather. National health insurance being one, minister had to come back. On GEBE, the prime minister had to come back. This is the second week following those meetings, in addition to the question hour to which I referred. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. As soon as there's any update, we will surely share it out here. I see MP Richardson. MP Hyacinth Richardson, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the Minister and his staff. Good afternoon to my colleagues. Mr. Chairman, as I told you before, I have a doctor's appointment so I'll have to leave. And if I get through in time, I will be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Richardson. No more notifications. Thank you for your notifications. The agenda point for this Central Committee meeting are draft national ordinance laying down rules on higher education and research, higher education ordinance under document IS/431/2022-2023, dated February 8, 2023, parliamentary year 2022-2023-165. It is good to note that this meeting is the continuation of the meeting adjourned on August 14, 2023, PY 2022-2023, and on September 14, 2023. During the aforementioned meetings, agenda point 1 was adjourned to give the minister time to prepare the answers to the questions, and agenda point 2 was also adjourned to give the initiative taker time to prepare the questions and then subsequently closed in the continuation meeting. We will now continue handling agenda point 1. We go over to the agenda point 1, draft national ordinance laying down rules on higher education and research under higher education ordinance IS/431/2022-2023, dated February 8, 2023, parliamentary year 2022-23-165. At this time, I give the floor to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports, Dr. Rudolph Samuel, to answer the questions the members of Parliament posed on August 14. Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, good afternoon also to the Secretary General, and good afternoon to the honorable members of Parliament. Good afternoon to the persons in the Tribune and all other persons who are listening to us by way of whichever medium. Mr. Chairman, I want to first say thank you not only to the support staff that we have here this afternoon, the controller of the ministry, financial controller of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport. To my right, Mr. Shigimoto, and to my left, we have policy support, and also a little further up, we have advisor to the cabinet, to the minister. Mr. Chairman, in the first round, I also indicated that reaching here today with this law, a lot of persons have made their contributions. And again, I want to say thank you to everyone, all the stakeholders, all the persons who are making this possible for the people of St. Martin, that this piece of legislation becomes active. I want to go over to answering the questions of the members of Parliament in the first round, and I start with the questions of Member of Parliament Gums. Our first question, strict focus on higher education based on labor market. MP disagrees with it. They should be able to offer programs that elevate the job availability in the market. The provisions, so MP, the provisions for the funding of higher education programs are broader than a strict focus on labor market. The minister's decision to fund a program will take into consideration both the job market perspectives of students and St. Martin's economic development and social needs. Our need for programs that elevate existing jobs can be considered as an economic or social or societal need in relation to the students' labor market perspective. The foreign question, foreign students. Was there consultations with Minister of Justice on this matter? How do we handle it right now? How will we handle it in the future? Mr. Chairman, through you to the honorable member of parliament. At the moment, the ministry is aware of protocols regarding foreign students, which are between the Ministry of Justice and USM. And it is the intention to follow in this direction also with other institutions. Article 121, permission to adjust admission fees. Would government permission now slow down the process? Would it be possible to maybe allow an annual increase in percentage of fees? Member of Parliament, the draft delegated legislation, the LBHAM, will provide for an annual adjustment of the tuition fees to index the general price developments. On the basis of Article 121, a higher tuition fee can be requested for a specific study program or for a specific program within a study program. The minister will only grant permission for this if the quality or accessibility of the education is not compromised. Number 4, viability of the law. How does the language difference of Dutch and English of the law affect USM? The USM should not be affected by the language difference of Dutch and English. Article 19 allows the institution the option of choosing English or Dutch as the language of instruction and examination. Within an institution, programs can be offered and examined in both languages. If an institution wishes to use a language of instruction other than the one of the official languages of St. Martin, the draft ordinance allows for this, provided there is a connection with education. Education may be offered in other language and examinations may be administered in another language when, number 1, it concerns a course related to that language, the education is given by a guest speaker, the specific nature / organization or quality of the education or origin of the students justifies this, or this takes place in the context of internationalization. Mr. Chairman, this brings me to the question of Member of Parliament Westcott Williams. In 2018, a presentation based on research paper was presented to Parliament. Did this paper serve as the basis of this law for tertiary education? The answer is yes. The research conducted and approved by the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports in 2017 serves as the basis for the policy that the draft higher education seeks to establish. Question 2, NEPA. Is NEPA not considered higher education, or is NEPA not considered in this law of higher education? Reference to a document by NUFIC. The National Institute for Professional Advancement, NEPA, is not an institution for higher education and does not offer higher education courses. NEPA offers training in secondary vocational education on the basis of the Ordinance on Secondary Vocational Education Training, Landsverordening, secundair beroepsonderwijs en educatie. Question 3. 2018 presentation, chapter. What does St. Martin have to take into account is that countries have less to spend on tertiary education. What is the minister's opinion on this? Where do we stand on the ability to finance what level of tertiary education? Member of Parliament, in the 2018 presentation, reference was made to research findings that sustainable financing of public higher education institutions is a challenge for governments worldwide as they seek to meet the demand for higher education. Based on that research, the Council of Ministers took the time. Based on that research, the Council of Ministers at the time took the following policy decisions on higher education. One, tie the economic growth agenda and the needs of the labor market directly to the educational agenda for higher education, tertiary education planning. Two, accept the realities for the level of ambition when focusing on the role of education, aim to grow steadily. Three, attract more foreign students. Four, be willing to invest and pay the core cost for higher education until a maximum percentage, and also organize quality assurance through specialized agencies / organization to maximize international quality assurance. And these policy decisions serve as the basis for the draft ordinance on higher education. Point 4 from the Member of Parliament. The paper states, the potential number of students for tertiary education is bigger than what is usually in school. Numbers were presented on number of students coming out of secondary education versus how many students apply for study financing and how much were granted study financing. The question, can the minister give an overview on how many people applied versus how many were granted from 2017 up to this year? In the answers provided, you would see in the table that in 2017, 164 requests came in, of which 142 was granted, 22 denied. In 2018, 161 requests, 126 granted, 35 denied. 2019, 122 requests, 83 granted, 39 denied. And 2020, 130 requests, 107 granted, 23 denied. In 2021, 122 requests, 99 granted, 23 denied. In 2022, 113 requests, 105 granted, 8 denied. And in 2023, 121 granted requests, 107 granted, and 14 denied. In question 5 from the Honorable Member of Parliament, the presentation continued. Best practices show that in order to cope with the complexity of fast-changing landscape of higher education, countries base the development of tertiary education on a vision. That vision is given. Quote, we envision there are 2 to 3 fully accredited bachelor/master programs available on St. Martin, unquote. In addition to associate programs and higher education institute offering e-learning for programs that are not available on the island, higher education is a form of public subsidized education, and the government helps to reach the goal of higher education institutions by creating the infrastructure needed. Government is willing to invest up to a certain maximum percentage of the core cost. This resulted in equal and better chances for more students and less brain drain. Students are encouraged to stay on the island. Question, in how far, now that higher education law is on the table, have the objectives of this vision been met in relation to USM? In 2018, when the consultations with stakeholders on the draft law took place, the number of accredited programs being offered by USM in collaboration with accredited higher education institutions have increased. Some of these programs are offered through e-learning possibilities between USM and other partner universities. The ministry developed the higher education funding model, which has enabled annual funding of USM as of 2020-2021 to be geared toward the sustainable funding of the institution through the funding of personnel and operation costs, taking into account the annual cost of USM. Through the funding model, the possibility for infrastructural investment based on long-term strategic planning is also a reality. Lastly, the process of articulating the required accreditation framework is being drafted in collaboration with USM, and the guidelines for recognitions are detailed in the law. With consistently applied, clearly articulated guidelines for accreditation and recognition, confidence in the quality of higher education on St. Martin will increase, and increased local and international student enrollment is expected to follow. Question 6 from the Honorable Member of Parliament. Reference to the stakeholders' discussion that took place in 2018. Since then, has any further consultation been had with the educational stakeholders? Mr. Chairman, one of the things I want to explain here is that in the development of the law, consultations with all the stakeholders begins and it goes on. And at a given moment, the technical evaluation begins. And when the technical evaluation of the law begins, the consultations stop. So as indicated during the presentation to Parliament, there were several exchanges between the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports and USM and AUC in 2018. With consensus on the general content of the law in 2018, the process of technical vetting of the legislation began. And once the vetting process began, the consultation process on the content of the law ends. Required adjustments were made along the way, but none having a significant impact on the underlying policy upon which the law is being established. Over the years, consultations have continued with both institutions. These have included consultations with USM related to the development of the higher education funding and implementation of the same, and consultation with both USM and AUC recently related to the development of a framework for accreditation of higher education programs. Consultations are expected to continue during the coming months with the development of a roadmap for implementation of the draft law and the draft national decree related to the funding of higher education. Question 7, have any consultations with the new medical school been held? Has an agreement been made with this university? Consultations regarding the draft law on higher education have only taken place with USM and AUC, as these are the only two higher education institutions that have been operating on St. Martin during its development. There has been no request for recognition by a new medical school, and no agreement related to same has been made by the government. Question 8. Can we receive an overview of the number of local students receiving scholarship from AUC over the last 5 years? Can this contribution also be requested from the new medical university? In the answers provided, you would see the graph, which is presented, and you would then see that in 2019, regarding AUC, 1 student. In 2020, 4 students. In 2021, 2. In 2022, 2. In 2023, 1, which is a total of 10 students from 2019 to 2023. Question 9, coordination of the infrastructure to attract foreign students. What is in place outside of the Education Ministry to make this happen? As mentioned previously, the ministry is aware that protocols exist in this area. Question 10, I would like to receive data regarding student population, those that receive scholarships. What can we do to close the gap between students that complete secondary education and those that go to higher education? Answer, the information in the table is for students who are currently receiving study financing, and then I am referring to the table in the answers given to this. We can see at the moment in Aruba, 1 student, in Barbados, 1 student, currently studying in Canada, 58 students, in Curaçao, 4, Dominican Republic, 2, and Jamaica, 2, in St. Martin, 88, in the Netherlands, 130, the US Virgin Islands, 1, United Kingdom, 9, and the United States, 132, brings a total of 429 students who are currently receiving study financing. In response to your second question, in order to continue increase access to higher education in accordance with the established higher education policy, government has committed to investing and pay the core costs for higher education until a maximum percentage, which was also previously mentioned. This brings me to the end of the questions from Ms. MP Westcott Williams, and then to the questions for MP Duncan. Attracting foreign students. What joint policies exist between the Ministry of ECYS and the Ministry of Justice? Was any work actually done on this concept? And as previously mentioned before, there are currently no joint policies regarding ECYS and justice related to foreign students. However, the ministry is aware that protocols exist between AUC and justice regarding foreign students. And this line, this idea, will be followed in the future. Question 2 from the Member of Parliament Duncan. Strong positioning of students, accessibility, ensuring that students with disabilities also have access to higher education institutions. Where does the law provide for this? Answer. Article 16 of the draft ordinance stipulates that the board of the higher education institution must ensure a safe learning and working environment for students and staff. An institution is safe if the social, psychological, and physical safety of the student is not affected by any actions of others. This also means that there is a safe and positive atmosphere at the institution, and therefore that the board of the institution prevents and acts against any type of discrimination. Also, based on Article 14 of the draft ordinance, the Student Council has the right to advise the board of the higher education institution on all matters of the institution. This gives students the opportunity to influence decision-making and developments in the institution, for example, to strengthen accessibility for students with disabilities. Article 44 and Article 45 of the draft ordinance stipulates that the board of the institution is obliged to clearly explain the rights and obligations of students arising from the institution's duty of care for high quality education. These rights and obligations and the applicable procedures with regard to education and examination must be laid down in a so-called education and examination regulation, onderwijs en examenregeling. One of the matters that the institution must record per study program in the education and examination regulation is the way in which the student with a physical or sensory impairment are reasonably given the opportunity to take the examinations. Question 3. How is the ministry looking to support these students when they attempt to access higher education. The Ministry of Education, Culture and Sport strives to meet the demand and support the people of St. Martin to become self-confident, resilient, lifelong learners, and creative and critical thinkers. Ensuring that students with special needs are afforded the best educational opportunities to advance academically, emotionally, and socially in the least restrictive environment is the core objective of the provision of special education on St. Martin on all levels, including primary, secondary, and higher education. Schools that serve students with special needs should be designed and built in such a way that these needs are taken into consideration. Some areas that need special attention and consideration when designing, building, and repairing schools that accommodate students with special needs include general physical infrastructure of the premises, circulation and layout of premises, and sensory elements. Most naturally, we do have schools that have already been built and would need adjustment in order to accommodate students with special needs. Question 4, innovation in higher education. How is the ministry supporting these opportunities for our students? Example, motion for a thesis library. How does the law promote research? Research is often a standard element in the curriculum. In an international context, it has been regulated that for the note of art and of science on the bachelor's and master's degree, a component of research must be part of the educational program. The draft ordinance allows the higher education institution to enter into commitments with professional practice, for example, for conducting research by its students. Through incentive cooperation between the higher education institution and the business community, knowledge can be applied more widely and new knowledge can be developed economically more quickly. The draft ordinance also allows the minister to enter into tripartite collaboration with a higher education institution and the business community. For example, to conduct research that benefit both the government and the business community, and where co-financing by the government and the business community is indispensable for the realization of the research project. For higher education institutions and its students, it offers the opportunity to work on research projects together with companies and the government. The higher education institution is the knowledge bearer in the collaboration. In this way, government supports innovative and socially relevant projects that cannot be fully financed from the market. Companies are then more willing to bear the cost and risk of such investigations. Accreditation and recognition. Question 5, need for national accreditation body. What is the national accreditation body? What provisions is there for this body? Recognizing the challenges for St. Martin, being the small scale, the limited resources, and the complexity of the education system, the Council of Ministers decided it would not set up its own national accreditation body on St. Martin, but would organize quality assurance through specialized agencies/organizations to maximize international quality assurance. It saves manpower and investment in building capacity that are otherwise needed in the educational system. Article 69 of the ordinance regulates that the minister recognizes accreditation bodies from other countries whose accreditation is of sufficient quality. Question 6, does the law recognize USM as an accepted government-funded institution? If no, why not? Yes, the USM is a government-funded institution for higher education as stipulated in Article 2, Paragraph 2, under B of the draft ordinance. Question 7, how does the minister see USM as a stakeholder and partner? Maybe we should move away from looking at our educational institutions as stakeholders, should look at our institutions as partners. As Minister of Education, I see USM as a partner with which the government has a stable working relationship that is taking an active role in the further development of St. Martin's human resources, particularly in the field of knowledge development and higher education in particular. Question 8, follow-up on 2018 discussion. Was there a follow-up meeting? If yes, what are the details? If not, why wasn't there any follow-up when the draft is now being presented in 2023? Answer. As indicated during the presentation to Parliament, there were several exchanges between the Ministry of Education, Culture and Sports, and USM and AUC in 2018, with consensus on the general content of the law. In 2018, the process of technical vetting of the legislation began. And once the vetting process began, the consultation process on the content of the law ended. Required adjustments were made along the way, as indicated before, but none having a significant impact on the underlying policy upon which the law is being established. Question 9. How have consultations continued since the original meeting in 2018? Over the years, consultations have continued with both institutions. These have included consultations with USM related to the development of the higher education funding and the implementation of the same, and consultation with both USM and AUC recently related to the development of a framework for accreditation of higher education programs. Consultations are expected to continue during the coming months with the development of a roadmap for implementation of the draft law and the draft national decree related to the funding of higher education. Question 10. Can the minister confirm that there is no funding model for higher education? If so, how are they being impacted that they meet the subsidy requirement for higher education? What is the expectation moving forward? If not, how can they expect to be funded if there is no funding model currently? Answer. The draft ordinance regulates the subsidy requirement that the higher education institute needs to meet in order to obtain funding. The basis on which the level of funding is calculated is determined by the national decree containing general measures. The government hopes to be able to complete the drafting of the national decree in 2024. The funding model for higher education was approved in 2020 and has been used as a pilot for the funding of higher education programs at USM since 2020-2021 academic year. In awaiting the acceptance of the draft ordinance by Parliament and the coming into effect of the ordinance and the national decree, the government of St. Martin will continue to contribute to the cost of the USM through the funding model for higher education and the general subsidy ordinance, Algemene Subsidieverordening. Question 11, recruitment of teachers. How does the law support and incentivize development of the faculty at the higher education institutions. The Higher Education Institute is responsible for its human resource management. Based on Article 90 of the draft ordinance, the board will determine the personnel policy, conduct personnel management, and also regulate the legal position of the personnel. In doing so, it will have to observe the applicable labor legislation as well as the requirements of due care. Question 12. Online learning. How does the law take this into consideration? What is in place? The extent to which online learning is a standard part of a program is determined by the quality standard for that specific program and therefore at the discretion of the accreditation body. Additionally, Article 16 of the draft ordinance provides a basis for imposing restrictions or conditions on higher education institutions. For example, in fighting a pandemic, to organize distance learning for its students. Question 13, and the final question for the Member of Parliament. Provisions to safeguard the autonomy of institutions. What does the ministry think is important to protect institutions like USM to ensure that it thrives and becomes bigger? For higher education institutions to strive, they need the freedom to make their own decisions regarding their responsibility for quality education at the institution. The draft national ordinance provides for a general duty of care. The government is of the opinion that the institutions are highly expert and professional and ideally suited to determine which quality standards they apply and how it allocates the available resources. The duty of care for quality is formulated in general terms and not laid down in standards that are too detailed. The higher education institution can determine for itself how to give substance to the duty of care and be accountable for it. This brings me to the questions of the Member of Parliament, Rolando Bryson. Question 1. Issue of higher education institution reflecting job market needs. Cautions that it does matter what economy and society needs in order to lessen foreign work permits. It needs to be a balanced approach and not a blanket approach, and a review of the institution's ability to provide some of those degrees to our locals to have the expertise but lack the qualifications. In the minister's opinion, decision to fund a new or a higher education program, he will take into consideration both the job market perspectives of students and St. Martin's economic development and societal needs. Question 2, what is government's vision of where we will go towards the number of students going to higher education, studying on St. Martin? What percentage should attend USM? The government's vision is to ensure that higher education is delivered in such a way that costs do not serve as an impediment to access for any St. Martin student who desires to pursue a study which is offered on the island by USM on its own or through its collaboration now or in the future with other accredited higher education institutions, and to attract international students to further increase the sustainability of said programs. Question 3, have we considered that once we want to become a destination of higher education, we need to be able to promote this? Are there provisions to provide capital investments or loan guarantees? The financial paragraph does not entail this. Ensuring financial sustainability of the institution, Article 12 of the draft ordinance allows for higher education institutions to make investments, lend money, take out loans, and enter into commitments for financial products. The board of the institution manages the financial resources and must enter into obligations in such a way that proper operation and continued existence of the institutions are ensured. As an institution can and may therefore develop commercial activities itself, such as the supply of certain products or services. The building of the institution can also be exploited commercially. A final question for the Member of Parliament Bryson. The financial paragraph is from 2016 to 2018. What was spent in the years? Updated financial prognosis of what was requested and what was actually used. What is this going to cost? The real totality of properly having higher education in this country. MP requests this in writing and it has been sent. Please see the attachment. Mr. Chairman, I then have one more question from the Member of Parliament, MP Gomes. Article 121, will there be a tiered fee structure for USM for local or international CARICOM, etc.? Article 8 of the draft ordinance stipulates that rules may be laid down by national decree containing general measures regarding the level of tuition fees. The draft national decree will determine the amount of the maximum tuition fee that the public and the government-funded institution may charge the student. The national decree will also regulate which students of St. Martin are entitled to this maximum amount of tuition fees. This means that the institutions are free to charge higher tuition fees for students who are not considered St. Martin students. Mr. Chairman, this brings me to the final answers in the first round to the questions of the members of Parliament. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Samuel. I see there's need for additional deliberations because people have marked their. MP Melissa Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to you, Khifir, my colleagues, the Minister and his support staff, and those joining us in the Tribune and online. Minister, thank you for the responses to the questions. I just had a clarification point on one of my questions, which was regarding the language query that I made. It wasn't so much on the language of instruction, but more on the interpretation of the law. So there are certain terminologies that are used that don't translate well from Dutch to English and vice versa. So that's really where that question was going. For example, I remember talking to friends in the Netherlands about, you know, my experiences at my alma mater in Miami. And when I brought up certain positions at my university, there is no equivalent for that in Dutch. So that's really what that question was about. But if there's a chance to clarify, that can be sent in writing, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Gums. The next person I see is MP Sarah Westcott-Williams. MP Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a good afternoon to you. A good afternoon to my colleagues. A good afternoon and a word of welcome to the Minister and his support staff. Of course, a good afternoon to the representatives of USM and others who are here in the hall with us, as well as those tuned into the meeting via different means. Mr. Chairman, I based my initial questions to the Minister, to which we have now received answers, on a 2018 research paper on higher education. That's what I based my questions on. One of my first questions to the Minister in this context was whether the results of this research were used in preparing this law? The minister's answer to that was affirmative. Yes, it has been. Mr. Chairman, I'll come to a specific question regarding consultation on this law today, vis-a-vis the research that was actually done in 2017, and the paper on the research was presented in 2018, making the point to say that the basis for this law before us was created going into 7 years ago. So putting that out there, I want to go into the following. I quoted from that research paper the following in my questions to the minister. The potential number of students for tertiary education is bigger than what is actually in school. Numbers were presented on numbers of students coming out of secondary education versus how many students apply for study financing and how many were granted study financing. Can the minister give an overview on how many persons applied versus how many persons were granted study financing from 2017 up to now, because the research paper stopped at 2016. The minister has provided in the answers the numbers of total requests for study financing in the years 17 through 23, those granted and those denied. My question to the minister, and the minister can provide these answers leading up to the public handling of this draft law. Because what I would like to know with respect to that picture presented as answer to my question number 4, that the numbers here be placed in a broader context. So a context of, for example, how many persons completed secondary education in any one of these years? How many persons sat exams? So let us put the context of how many requests for study financing in the different years in the total context of how many students leave, for whatever reason, our secondary educational system. So I would like that broader context in terms of leaving. Do we know how many went to study that we have? So put it all in a bigger context, please. The answer given to my question number 4. I continue to talk about this research paper, the basis for the law before us, and I want to now read the answer to my question number 5. And my question was about stakeholder consultation, because that was something referred to in the research paper. And it states the following. So I present to the minister that the paper states, best practices show that in order to cope with the complexity of fast-changing landscape of higher education, countries base the development of tertiary education on a vision. In 2018, that vision was given, and I quote, we envision there are 2 to 3 fully accredited bachelor master programs available on St. Martin, in addition to associate programs and higher education institute offering e-learning for programs that are not available on the island. And the rest of the answer was read by the minister. And then I want to go to the answer to that. Since, by the minister, the ministry, since 2018, when the consultations with stakeholders on the draft law took place, the number of accredited programs being offered by the USM in collaboration with accredited higher education institutions have increased. And then it goes on. However, after this law was formulated, no other consultations took place about the draft law to appear, or which is now in Parliament. And the question would be, after the time that has passed for that research paper, after the initial discussions, and the minister refers to not very incisive changes, but were the institutions mostly involved with this law? Were they consulted about the final draft that is here with us, given the passage of time and the changing circumstances that also affect higher education? So is my question with respect to the answer given there. And then the minister continues with respect to the topic of consultations, that the consultations that did take place with USM, etc., had to do with the development of higher education funding and the implementation of same, and consultations with both USM and AUC related to the development of a framework for accreditation of higher education program. So if the minister can be a little more specific as to where we are right now with the matter of that framework for accreditation. You know, the steps, what has happened, what more needs to be done, a timeline, some specifics with respect to the process. I understood from the answers provided by the minister that there has been no request, and I quote now from the answer given to question number 7, there has been no request for recognition by a new medical school and no agreement related to same has been made by government. Can the minister, for the handling of this draft law in a public session of Parliament, attain from his colleague, Minister of TIAT, whether a business license has been given for any other institution that would, or business that would offer higher education, if that can be ascertained for the handling of this law. I would like to know, with respect to question number 8, where the question was, can we receive an overview of the number of local students receiving scholarships from AUC over the last 5 years? And I also asked if that contribution can also be requested from a new medical university. But the point that I want to get to under that question would be the numbers provided as answer to my questions. And that is that in 2023, 1 person received a scholarship from AUC. By the way, the scholarship agreement with AUC is one that was made during or at the establishment of AUC on St. Martin. I continue with the number 2022, 2, 2021, 2, 2024, and 2019, 1. So we were at 1 in 2019 and back to 1 in 2023. And I would like the minister to, if possible, provide us with some further insight into so were the scholarships available? Did we not have sufficient persons looking for the, or looking to study in the medical field? Have they gone other places to study in the medical field? So if it can be put again in context of the entire study financing, medical field, etc. The matter of USM, and I had asked the question, I don't believe getting an answer. USM, yeah, I did get an answer back when I asked the question before, but it was not a satisfactory answer because the minister indicated that a vision was established for 2018 as the basis for this draft law. So what I did ask was, what is the vision and accompanying budget of USM? And what is government's contribution to that vision and the budget of USM? So I want to know, fine, we have a vision. We want to attract not only more students, we want to attract foreign students. And my question about what infrastructure is in place to do so. So is that vision also shared by USM? And has USM, based on their vision, presented a budget? And what part of that budget presented based on the vision by USM has the government agreed to contribute to USM? So are we meeting what we say on paper we want USM to be and to do. And then I'll leave it here for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Prescott-Williams. I don't see any other member of parliament requesting to ask any further questions. So I look, MP Solange Duncan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to the Minister and his team and my colleagues and everyone present. Mr. Chairman, I only just wanted to ask the Minister if he received questions on the draft law from USM and if these questions have been answered, because I think, as the Minister mentioned, USM is a partner, and so as the main partner, I would say, where it pertains to higher education, it would be interesting to understand if the questions by the university directly to the Minister on the law were answered, or if the Minister is saying, listen, the law is already in Parliament and there will be no more real consultations on the law itself. I would just like some clarity on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Solange Duncan. I have MP Sarah Prescott-Williams again. MP Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a quick follow-up, what you might have noticed I was looking for when I was concluding my questions earlier. And I would like the Minister to explain a little more in detail his response to my question. And it reads as follows. That is question number 10. And the Minister responded, in response to your second question, in order to continue to increase access to higher education in accordance with the established higher education policy, government has committed, and here it goes, to investing and pay the core costs for higher education until a maximum percentage. I would like a further clarification on that statement. What exactly does that mean? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Sarah Prescott-Williams. The next person is MP George Pantaplet. MP George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the Chair, my colleagues in Parliament, our Minister of Education, support staff, and of course, the representative of USM. So, Chairman, I want to thank the Minister for the answers that were posed. These two questions might seem repetitious, but I still pose it because at times, we miss it. Mr. Chairman, through you, does USM, the Minister, receive the necessary finances in order to meet their responsibilities at present? Again, I repeat my question. Does USM receive the necessary finances in order to meet their responsibilities at present? And secondly, it might sound, I think, almost close to what my colleague mentioned earlier, but does this law that we are busy discussing, does it increase the need for our students to make use of USM instead of having to travel abroad to further their studies? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP George. There are no more members of Parliament asking for questions, so I will look to my right. Honourable Minister, would you go right away in answering, or you need some time? Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, let me say thank you to the members of Parliament for the follow-up questions. Indeed, they are not many. However, there are a couple of questions that will need, some time to handle. And I think this is a meeting week, and then we have free. Then the next meeting week, I think I'll be available to answer the questions.
There are few that you think need time,
No,
but the rest you could.
No, I will have all of them by the next meeting week.
Or is it okay if the minister sends them in writing?
Yeah, that's also good.
Yeah? Yeah, MP Westcott, you have the floor.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to make sure I understand, so we don't have, I and several of us don't have a problem with the minister responding in writing, but then am I to understand that we're going to get them, what did the minister, I want to know when we're going to get the answers so that we can plan for the public meeting. That's what I would like to know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Minister,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank the Member of Parliament for the question. I am indicating 2 weeks, so we will have, I guess, if I look at Parliament, they will have, this is a meeting week, but we have 1 week in between, and then the following week, you should have the answers to the questions in writing.
is that okay with all members of Parliament? Yeah. Thank you, Minister. There are no more further comments and questions. A report will be sent to the government on this draft national ordinance for further handling. I would like to thank the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Dr. Rudolph Samuel, and his support staff for their presence here today and for providing the necessary information. Once again, within 2 weeks, we will receive all the answers, including what MP Duncan asked you about the other point. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting. I thank you all for your participation, and I hereby close this meeting.